So, I will start with introduction. The term law is used in various senses. In physical science, for example, law means the sequence between cause and effect. A law of gravitation is such a law. The concept of law as a guide to human behavior is as old as civilization itself. The relevance of law to individual behavior has become so intimate nowadays that everyone has their own understanding of its character, which would be of necessity shaped by their own perspective. Not surprisingly, the hunt for a common definition of law has been a never-ending journey. In social science, the term law generally refers to rules and regulations that govern human activity. All rules and regulations, however, are not laws. Most moral and ethical guidelines and principles, as well as convention and usage, are not necessarily law. These standards, norm, folkway, or more, however, are not laws, since if they are violated, the state cannot take action against the violator unless that custom is transformed into a law. A person who violates social or ethical rules cannot be legally punished. Laws are the regulation that govern the state, sanction of punishment or reward. The civil society is the state. It establishes standard norms to govern human behavior under its domain. A law then is a general norm of external human conduct enacted and enforced by a sovereign, legitimate authority. According to Hegel, law is the component that deploys the force of organized society to govern individual and group behavior and to prevent, remedy, or punish violation of defined social norms. According to Holmes, the prohibitions of what the courts will do in true and nothing more pretentious are what I mean by law. Four elements can be concluded from the previous definition of law. Firstly, there is normative element, which means that the law establishes a standard of conduct to improve human behavior and the public good. Secondly, there is an element of regularity, which means that this set of conduct are created and applied universally. Thirdly, there is an element of administering, which means that the courts will objectively apply and administer their set of conduct. And finally, there is an element of legitimacy, which means that this set of conduct is enforced by a recognized legal authority. All of the indicates that law are generally norms created and implemented by a legal government.
Thank you, Hannah, for the introduction part. Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is FARAH ANISA binti SHAHARUDIN. My student number is 2021618094. So today, I will go on explaining my part, which is the source of law and the type of law. First, I'm going to explaining about the source of law. Law is typically thought of a set of rules created by social and political institutions in order to regulate behavior. On the other hand, law do not just include rules and regulation. A sovereign lawful power establish and uphold a throughout standard of external human conduct known as law. Thus, there is three different sources of law, which is custom, religion, and legislation. The first source of law is custom, which is most of the law are constructed around government-approved behavior, which is custom. In the tribal age, we learned that by studying political history, any disagreement that happened between two members of a group would be settled by the chief. Tribal chief used to solve conflicts using custom and norms. The tribes developed into state, and this custom will transform into law. The next sources of law is religion. Some religious laws were established as a result of implementing certain religious rules. To talk about this subject in more detail, we might look at the Muslim world. The Islamic religious law is regarded as a manifestation of God direction to Muslims. and as a result of their religious view, all Muslims are obligated to follow a set of law or rules, the Sharia. For instance, the Quran forbids the use of alcohol and other intoxicants in the Muslim world because they are terrible habits that makes people forget about God. Because of this, most of Muslims stay away from alcohol entirely, even in tiny quantities used in cooking. The legislature, a primary source of law, KAMNAS, and the federal constitution have authority over this law. Legislation is the act of passing or issuing a law by a legislative, parliamentary, or other governing body. To separate it from other activities, a piece of legislation may be referred to as a bill before it is passed, and as legislation generally while it is being debated. Then, there are several subcoordinate laws, all of which are covered in depth here. The pre-supreme law first and principally refer to law passed by the state sovereign power. It is outside the jurisdiction and oversight of any state authority. On the other hand, subcoordinate law refers to legislation passed by a body other than the state highest authority. This legislation, existence, legality, and continuance are all within the supreme authority control. Second, judicial law. The court has the power to establish regulation controlling its operation. Thirdly, local law may be passed by local government in order to address challenges unique to the area. Only the region in which they are enacted is covered by this law. Fourth, it is known as colonial law when a nation is not a free entity and is under the rule of another nation. They are referred to by the word colonies, dominions, and other identification. I'm done with the source of law. Now I'm going to explaining about the types of law. There are 5 types of law, which is national law, public law, constitutional law, administrative law, and international law. Firstly is national law. These laws were made by the legal sovereign power and are enforced within its domain. Both constitutional and common law may apply. Ordinary law are frequently passed by the legislature. Thus, the Constitution contains the law that are considered by the constitutional. There are guiding principles by the government function. Only court have the authority to interpret them. Next is public law. Public law address all forms of human behavior. Public law are those legal norms that control how the citizen and the state interact. Its goals are to safeguard and uphold the interests of society as a whole. Other than that, privacy laws also are those rules of law that control an individual's legal rights, responsibilities, and obligations. For example, of private law include the law of contract, the law of tort, the law of property, and the law of trust. Thirdly is constitutional law. According to Aristotle, a constitution is the manner of life the state has settled on. But C.F. Strong asserts that it is a collective of principles according to which the power of government, the rights of governed, and the relation between the two are balanced. Both terms are particularly relevant to the Malaysia Constitution. Aside from that, only the original interpretation is acceptable when discussing the British Constitution. A writing constitution is a document that has been approved by the federal government or the highest authority. For an example of a writing constitution is the Federal Constitution of Malaysia, which grants writing a constitution to all 13 of its states. The benefit of writing constitution is that it is clear, specific, and precise. Then, the government's authority may be limited and difficult to violate. Regarding the unwritten constitution, it is a tradition or a constitution that is not recorded in written composition. It is uncertain, and it is still necessary to make a clear separation between constitutional law and the other laws. The other types of law is administrative law. In order to manage public administration through the public sector, the government has administrative legislation. Although not detailed, this form of regulation can be used as a general guide to governing people. For instance, the federal constitution grants local government the authority to create a revenue, but the legislation is silent on how they should do so. As a result, the public administration in the parliament has ordered them to do so. The Dewan Bandaraya Kota Kinabalu (DBKK), for instance, has the authority to manage parking throughout the city of Kota Kinabalu and impose parking fine in order to raise revenue. Additionally, the general order is utilized in the public sector to manage government officer and employee in terms of their pay, benefit, time off, and promotion. Employees in the public sector are required to follow all the general order. Last but not least is international law. The law that govern on how government behave while engaging with another are known as international law. This law and the guidelines are based on conventions, treaties, and agreements that need to be signed by the nation state. If the state themselves came to an agreement, the norms and the principle might on the whole be imposed. Other than that, a system of law including principle, norms, standard, and regulation by which relation among nations and other international individuals are controlled. It demonstrates on how the leaders of the state create law to govern their nation, which are then followed by the people inside the state. Essentially, the law that must be drafted must be capable of resolving issues such as multi-assault, violence, terrorism, and regional conflict. Now, my groupmate will continue explaining for her part.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NURIN Irdina binti AIDIL Ezrul. I want to talk about a legal system of law. Legal system of law. Since the beginning of human civilization, every culture has developed its own legal system, which is a set of laws that have been adopted by the legitimate power. A legal system was established as a result of these laws. Two legal systems, such as common law and civil law, were created by Western civilization. Communist law was created by the communist system. The Islamic legal system was created by the Islamic civilization. In the current era, numerous nations use blended legal system. Firstly is common law. Most of the former British colonies have these laws, which were developed in Great Britain after the retreat of Roman soldiers from Britain in the 5th century. Wave of British invasions took place throughout the next 500 years. Every invader, including the Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and Danes, brought their own system of laws for handling legal issues. Finally, King William did not abolish the old rituals or practices when the Norman invasion occurred in 1066. Instead, an English common law system eventually emerged based on the then current laws and customs. After incorporating commercial law, admiralty law, probate law, the English legal system was complete. Ruskin and others assert that common law has three distinguishing characteristics. It is case law, which means that it is based on particular legal judgments rather than a full body of statutes in the first place. Second, common law has a lot of flexibility because it was created by judicial judgment. To fit each situation, judge can simply reinterpret or amend earlier decision and concepts. Third, the common law strongly relies on precedent or stare decisis. Since no two cases are exactly same, a judge may point out difference to justifiably depart from tradition. These rules were enforced by the British not just in their own country but also in their colonies. Several of the common laws still apply in many former British colonies, including Malaysia, Canada, Australia, India, and Nigeria. There were some responses to the British common law system following the American Revolution in 1776. It is now illegal to cite British cases in many other former British colonies thanks to regulations that were passed there. However, the protracted legacy of British control and the absence of any codified laws of their own forced those governments to adopt the common law system in the end. In the majority of African and Asian nations, it has served as the main legal framework. In actuality, England is still used to teach judges from those nations. Secondly is civil laws. These laws were originally created by the Romans, and many of them were later adopted in the French legal framework. The creation of a thorough legal system was the Romans' most significant contribution. Roman laws were created over a long period of time. In his Liges, Corpus Juris, and the Code, Emperor Justinian codified numerous laws between 527 and 565. Thus addressed the fundamental issues in law and justice, and over time, the Justinian Code developed into a cornerstone of European legal history. The Justinian Code was briefly challenged by several European regimes, such as Germany, after the fall of the Roman Empire, but it quickly regained its status thanks to the writings and action of numerous jurists and law professors in Europe. Following that, several nations started to codify their laws. The Napoleonic Civil Code, which gave rise to the civil law legal system, first emerged in France in 1804. Other nations followed after the heavily imitated the civil laws, including Belgium, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Spain. Guy says the civil law system accords significant value to reason, logic, and legal experience. The driving force behind legal system founded on civil law is the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law as determined by the judicial interpretation and precedent. Civil law, in contrast to common law, uses immaterial legal concepts or principles to resolve conflicts. Each dispute's facts are evaluated on their own merits, without reference to earlier judicial interpretation of the law. The concept of stare decisis or any other method of enforcing case precedents is not formalized in civil law. Instead, the interpretation of civil law concept gives precedence to the publications of legal scientists and professors. All of France's colonies received the civil law, and many of the civil laws are still in use in those territories. For instance, civil law is widely used in the Canadian province of Quebec since before the being ruled by the British in 1763. Quebec was governed by the French. Lastly is communist legal system. In a communist society, only one communist party is in power, and as a result, the party controls both law enforcement and legal education. The laws are based on the writings of Mao Zedong, Karl Marx, and Lenin compared to Western laws. They are significantly dissimilar. To question the government and the system is the worst crime under the communist system. Anti-state agitation carries severe penalties. Laws are also used to achieve production targets, combat inefficiency, and produce goods of high quality. Members of the Communist Party typically serve as judge. The Communist Party has ties to even lawyers in the former Soviet Union and Eastern European nations. The legal system was dominated by communists. The communist legal system is currently only used in China and Cuba.
Next, I'm going to talk about function of law. The law has a comprehensive range of legal domains and has an impact on society in a variety of ways. Contract law, for example, governs agreement to exchange goods, service, or anything of value, and it encompasses anything from buying a bus ticket to selling option on a derivative exchange. Property law governs people's rights and obligations in relation to real assets, such as land, as well as private property, such as clothes, books, and cars, and intangible assets, such as the major function of the law is to protect fundamental human or individual rights. Human rights are fundamental privileges that we all possess just by virtue of our humanity. They embody principles such as justice, decency, equality, and respect in society. They are critical safeguards for us, particularly for those who may be victims of abuse, neglect, or loneliness. Most crucially, these liberties allow us to speak out collectively against government tyranny. Malaysia's constitution guarantees fundamental human rights. Among them are the right of free speech, the issue of slavery, and the treatment of a patient. Legislative precautions to avoid human rights violations and abuses include acts and law with a human rights component or those pertain to certain group of society whose rights may be compromised at the national level. The second function of law is to regulate human behavior and activity. Self-regulation, also known as behavior regulation, is the ability to control one's own conduct. As a result, the goal of the law is to control the subset of human behavior that involve activity directed towards others, and it's concerned with social interaction and culture, as well as ethics, social environment, authority, persuasion, and coercion. The law has a significant impact on how individuals behave. The law has a number of consequences for citizens' behavior. Legal notions have well-known effects. Legislation may, for example, increase or diminish the number of options available to people to achieve their desire by imposing tax or providing subsidy. Furthermore, society can use this strategy to provide incentive for good behavior. The third function of the law is to protect justice against wrongdoing. Justice, in its broader sense, is the idea that people get what they deserve, with the definition of deserving impacted by a range of fields and views, including moral sincerity based on ethics, reason, law, religion, equity, and fairness. The government will strive to improve justice from the time to time, establishing courts and enforcing their judgment. Dispute resolution refers to the method and procedure used to aid in the peaceful resolution of social disputes. Conflict resolution refers to the process of settling problems between parties. In addition, the legal system provides a firm foundation for the problem solving. Legislation is significant because it sets a set of rules for citizens to follow. It was also created to provide clear rules and order for everyone's behavior, as well as to maintain the balance of power among the three branches of government. It contributes to the smooth operation of society. There would be chaos if there were no laws, with survival of the fittest and everyone fighting for their own interests. It is not, for the most part, an ideal way of life. Even while laws can be difficult, ambiguous, and misinterpreted, they provide a framework for our responsibility and allow us to enjoy our rights. A law is the decision of the appropriate law in a given situation by a judge or governing authority.
Conclusion. Despite the fact that numerous new pieces of legislation have been passed and numerous others are in the works, the common law will continue to play a significant part in the modern Malaysian state. Many of these brand new written law were inspired by or modified from the comparable law in other states and territories. Other than that, authorities continue to play a crucial role in interpreting the written word and giving it the intended meaning. The advancement of Islamic law would go hand in hand with the continuous growth of common law. Principles of Islamic law, particularly those related to Islamic commercial law, will become more widely accepted as Malaysia expands its competitive potential in Islamic banking, the Islamic capital market, Islamic insurance, and other areas of Islamic commercial activities. The common law, which served the foundation of feudalism law in general under the Malaysian legal system, is not replaced by this. That's all from me. Thank you.